Well, I'm hitting record. Broti, nice to meet you. Thanks for doing lunch therapy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So I know a little about you because I follow you on Twitter. I'm a big fan of your tweets.
Thank you
And
so much. That's
and
very kind of you to say.
of course, I've read your New Yorker stuff, and I know you write for TV, but I don't know a lot about your life. So this will be really interesting to get to know you.
Yeah. Um, yeah, ask me anything. I'm an open book and I'll probably overshare. So
That's fantastic. Well,
yeah.
I think a good starting point for lunch therapy would probably be what is your relationship to food? Are you a food person? Do you like food?
Yes, I love food. I love cooking. I'm bad at baking because I think there's like a chemistry to it that uh I'm like a these days the way that I cook is a little more intuitive than I used to, and I do not have any sort of intuition when it comes to baking.
Hmm.
And so I'll like I tried to make cookies very recently. And that's like typically a thing that's hard to mess up. And it was amazing uh to sort of see how much I was able to.
What went wrong? What did they look like?
Um, you know what's weird? Tall.
What?
There was a dimension to them that I was like, this is not what cookies are.
I'm so curious about that because I make a lot of cookies. How did they wind up tall?
They wound up tall, I think, because I put too much flour or maybe the wrong, maybe like too much baking soda, something.
Oh, they puffed up, they puffed.
Yeah, well, the thing was that they puffed, but just up. Like this was sort of, I was kind of fascinated by it. And my boyfriend was like, I don't know what you're talking about. These are great.
Oh,
These have all the things that I want, which is, flour and chocolate chips.
right. Oh, were they chocolate chip cookies?
Yeah, they were your most classic cookie.
And were you
Um,
using a specific recipe, or did you just find a random one?
I just found a random one.
Okay.
Because a friend sent me a specific recipe that I had used, and those turned out much better. But then this was just like a random one. And I was like, oh, something's gone horribly wrong in a way that I both can't really explain, and I could never recreate. Once again, to put the amount that this was alarming to put cookie dough, what you think is cookie dough, into the oven, and then for it to come out a little cylindrical.
I've never had that happen. I think that's kind of fascinating. I wish
Yeah,
this whole podcast could just be about your cookie experience, although I am very curious about your lunch too, which we'll get to.
yeah. I mean, it was just very odd. I was like,
So
I took them
baking, yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's funny because when I make cookies, this dough, I mean, we're going to talk forever about cookies, but when I make cookies, the dough is stiff enough that I feel so I use an ice cream scoop, and then I drop rounded balls of cookie dough onto the baking sheet and flatten them a little with my hand. But
yeah,
so I'm trying to imagine that then becoming a cylinder.
yeah. I mean, or even a little bit, maybe cone shaped. I don't know. Either way, it went the wrong direction. It once again went the impressive third dimension.
It's so funny because I've been cooking for 15 to 20 years. I don't even know how long anymore.
Yeah.
And I used to have all kinds of disasters when I started out. And then I've gotten pretty good at in the past 5 to 10 years, I figured it out. But we went to visit friends during the pandemic who were in our pod. And I made ribs, barbecued ribs that had brown sugar in them. And I burnt, I put them in foil and baked them in the oven for 3 hours at a low temperature. And when we unwrapped the foil, it was black char, or tar, it was just black. And my friends were like, no, it's fine, it's gonna be delicious. And they wouldn't let me throw it away, and they ate literally burnt meat. So I guess it happens to everyone, is my point.
Yeah. And those are good friends.
Yeah, I guess so. Or they just really these friends also smoke, so I feel like maybe they really like smoking or the taste of burnt things.
Yeah, they were like, this is a food equivalent of a pack of parliaments.
Well, I'm curious with your brain, because like you have a comedic brain, and I'm trying to like think about baking versus like not baking cooking, because like um baking I think tends to be more left brained, I think, where it's like very like math oriented and like very like 1 cup of flour, like 2 sticks of butter. It's very precise, whereas the other kind of cooking is a little more impulsive. But I feel like comedy to me is a little bit of both. Like there's craft to it, but there's also impulsivity. So I'm curious if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to comedy, for me, sometimes it is actually sort of mathematical. Like if I'm writing a humor piece or something like that, um, like the jokes that I make sort of follow like a similar formula.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually like kind of approach comedy writing from like a more mathematical side of me. Like it's
Really?
yeah, it's a little bit there's something comfortingly rote about, I think, just writing one-liners or like writing jokes. And that is like greatly comforting to me. When it comes to baking, I use neither part of my brain. Um
Uh-huh.
and then I put cookie dough in the oven, and then it comes out like a huge tennis ball or something.
But like, okay, like your Twitter, for example, like when I read your Twitter, it feels so impulsive to me. Like it feels like these just come out of you, and like they're not. I mean, not to say that they're not crafted, but like they feel very raw and like
Yeah,
immediate.
I would say that my Twitter has sort of like um the tone of somebody who's like deeply, deeply ill,
Okay.
somebody who needs immediate medical attention.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um,
But it
I
works. It's working, you know?
Yeah, no, it is. And instead of what would be appropriate, which is 50,000 people calling 911 at the same time for me, some I'm getting some fun stuff out of it. I'm meeting cool people. But yeah, I think, Twitter is a little bit more impulsive these days for me because I'm like alone with my thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and I hate that. So I need to put them somewhere. And my thoughts are generally so stupid. And I'm like, well, it's nice to have, space for that. Yeah, I would say that this is a long-winded way of sort of not answering your question, but
I don't
agreeing
even
with
remember what my question was, so it's fine.
yeah, it was
Uh,
how are you?
oh yeah, how are you? Yeah. How's it going?
Yeah, it was you asked me a riddle. Um,
Okay.
but I no, I actually would agree with you. I think my Twitter is much more impulsive than any of my other writing. I think my other writing is definitely much more like mapped out. I am big on outlining,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is like it's interesting because I think like my creative process, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
just what a dumb way to put what I do.
Oh, I
As
think you're being too
sort of
self-deprecating though, because like your stuff is really funny. So it's not
thank you so
not
much.
like it's like you're just crapping out a bunch of bad stuff. It's like it's good. And I think like within what feels like stupidity, there's actually the brilliance. So it's like there's
Thank
something
you.
there.
That is very kind of you. Yeah, I think uh, I uh I'm very like my creative process sounds very uncreative. Like it again, I like approach it. I was always sort of a more math minded person. Like
Mm-hmm.
I really loved math. And I really loved like I thought that I was probably going to go into that. And then I went to college and I was like, oh, I'm smart in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But it helped me figure out how to like make a piece of writing,
Mm-hmm.
which was which for me always involved some kind of like studying of, really good writing, much better than myself writing, and then sort of trying to figure out what those formulas were.
Well, it's so interesting because I feel like cooking, like for me, cooking has become so impulsive that it's hard for me to put things down as a recipe. But like the recipe is the form that people need in order to recreate like what you just made. So it feels like comedy is that same idea, like where there's like this like impulsive, free-spirited side, but you have to contain it in a way that's communicable to people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. Like and cooking for me is very impulsive these days. It's like very impulsive for my mom. My dad, on the other hand, is very by recipe. He has like recipe books, and he is very like, he's very particular about that. But my mom and I are both very like when I first moved to LA and I was just starting to like cook for myself and take on a semblance of responsibility, I would ask my mom for recipes, just for like Bengali comfort food and stuff like that. And all of her recipes were like, I don't know, just add however much you want of anything.
Right. That doesn't help at all.
Yeah, it doesn't help. It's like sort of a glorified shopping list.
Yeah. That's really funny. I have a friend who's Pakistani, and she brought me home with her to like learn, because she said her mother and her aunts were like the most amazing cooks she's ever met. And so like I went back to her family home in Georgia, like to write this whole essay about it. And like, and I couldn't keep up with them. Like it was like they were just going so fast, and I was just like, wait, what was that? What did you do? Wait, and it was delicious, but I couldn't like give any recipes at the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of how. That is how I cook. Like it's hard. And now I understand where like my mom's coming from, because it is kind of hard to figure out like, okay, so what was my recipe here? Because, everyone's hands are different. So a pinch looks very different for me versus, a giant or a teeny tiny mouse.
It's actually funny because I just sold my first article with like original recipes to the Washington Post. And
oh wow, congratulations.
Thanks.
Really cool.
Yeah, it feels cool, but it's so funny because like I kind of bullshitted my way. It's so I hope they're not listening to this, but like I was like, oh yeah, here's my recipe ideas. But now they're like asking me all these questions because they're like, how much yield did you get from the white bean hummus? And like how many cups, like what size ramekins did you? And it's like 2 cups, 8-ounce ramekins. Oh, I just literally have no idea.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know, just like Skype me and and then you eyeball it.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of my cooking strategy is eyeballing it.
Yes. And by the way, they're going to test these recipes in their kitchen. So they will be really good recipes. So if anyone's listening to this, I'm not lying to you about these recipes.
Well, I wrote an essay for the failing New York Times
right.
A few years ago. And I wrote this essay about my favorite food, which is this Indian street food called pani puri, which
I think I saw that. Yeah.
Oh, cool. It was very funny when that essay came out because it was, it was in the Sunday Times, and like there were 4 articles in that, and one of them was like, the first one was like why Honduras will never see like a better climate, and then the second one was about ISIS, and then the third one was about Harvey Weinstein, and then there was my favorite food.
It's important. Yeah.
My mom makes my favorite food. Here is how my mom makes it.
I struggled with this my whole life about like food writing, whether or not food writing is important. And I think ultimately through a lot of my own therapy, I've discovered that it is. So I know what you're saying, but it was a valuable addition to that page.
I mean, I love reading food writing. I love anything. I was like thinking about this the other day because I forget who, like a friend was talking about some kind of like Twitch stream where they like watch other people play video games, and I was like, why would you ever want to do that? And then I thought to myself like, oh no, I just sit on the computer all day and watch the Barefoot Contessa. That's exactly what that is.
How do you watch it on the computer? Is it like illegal downloads of the Barefoot Contessa?
just go to YouTube and
Oh,
this
right.
is the thing, like my entire YouTube like curated homepage is just
Uh-huh.
like the beautiful love between the barefoot Contessa and her husband.
You would have been good. I did a tweet the other day. I feel like you would write the perfect one, which is like, what would the barefoot Contessa's Real Housewives tagline be?
Oh my
And
God.
I
Yeah.
came up with like, I made there may be 4 sticks of butter in my cupcakes, but it takes more than that to butter me up.
That's really good.
All right, Broti, we've been stalling too long. This is actually the longest I've ever, that means we're really hitting it off, but we can't delay the therapy any longer because I now have to ask you, what did you have for lunch?
Okay, so today I kind of had a late breakfast. So I had oatmeal with bananas in it. My boyfriend makes this for me. It's oatmeal with peanut butter and bananas. And he puts in chocolate chips because I'm a child. And
Okay, okay.
delicious. But I will tell you what I had for dinner last night because I'll probably have some of that later today, which was I made lamb and then I made sog on the side.
Oh my God, that sounds
Yeah,
delicious.
it was, listen, it was pretty good. It turned out.
Unfortunately, for our purposes, we're gonna not be able to use your lamb for your therapy session today because that was your dinner, and the meal that you're gonna have later, by my clock, will be a snack or an early dinner.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I'm just teasing though. Actually, what I think is interesting immediately. So, like, what I try to do when people tell me what they had for lunch and they talk about it is I try to pick up on like little things that reveal their character in some meaningful way. So, the first thing that I've picked up on is the loose schedule, the sense that like there was a
Yeah.
late breakfast, there might be an early lamb leftover situation. And so, have you always sort of flown by the seat of your pants? Like, do you just sort of float through the day, or are you very, it seems like you're not very schedule oriented.
No, I'm not very schedule oriented. I yeah, I just kind of uh I I sort of I like to vibe it out as
Mm-hmm.
it were. Yeah, I'm not super schedule oriented. I get frustrated around like the 3 to 5 period where I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know what meal this would be.
It gets
Uh,
me so angry, like when I walk past a restaurant at like 3:30 and there's like people sitting in there and like, what are you eating? What meal is
yeah,
that?
what are you having right now?
Yeah, I don't know.
It seems, I guess that I would feel more comfortable calling that lunch than I would dinner. I think that calling that dinner, I would be like, unless you're like Mark Wahlberg and bedtime is 5:30 or whenever his
Does he
bedtime.
really go to bed at 5:30?
Yeah, he had this thing that it was like what his daily schedule was, and it was wild. It was like he gets up at like 3 a.m. or something like that and starts working out, and but then he like goes to sleep at 7 p.m. But here's the thing that I found sort of wild about it was like, why don't you just shift that down?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, that's very
just
weird.
it seems like it just seems like you're in a different time zone from like your corporeal form.
It's like Eastern Standard Time, Mark Wahlberg time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that makes a lot of sense. Like, why wouldn't he? Yeah, why wouldn't he just do it all a little bit later?
Yeah, because it's like you're still getting your 8 hours of sleep. Just do it at the normal time.
Yeah, that I think I should have him on and ask him these questions. But to
Yeah.
turn it back on you,
Yeah.
the other part of this that I'm curious about. So I feel like there's like two phases to what you talked about. One was the meal that your boyfriend made for you, and then
Yes.
there was the meal from last night, which it seemed as you talked about, you had some pride like in sharing it. Like it was almost like you wanted me to like hear like, but by the way, like I know what I'm doing and I made something really good.
Yes. And I need you to know that.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
think
even
so.
I want you to know. I need that to be,
Yeah.
the message that you take away is
Well,
that
we'll get to that, but I want to ask you about the boyfriend cooking oatmeal for you. So, like, are you somebody that likes to take care of other people, or do you prefer to be taken care of, or do you like a mix of the two?
I like a mix of the two. I have like a very particularly caring boyfriend who he
Humble brag.
yeah, no, just a straight up brag. But it like it does every now and then I am like, yikes, am I doing enough? Am I nice enough? But he very much likes to take care of other people, and I think we have like kind of we sort of fell into like not schedule, but we sort of fell into like different roles of like he tends to make more of the daytime meals and I tend to make dinner.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
What do you think
And
that says about things? Like, how does that reflect on your relationship or who you are as people?
well, I think he so I'm in a room right now. I'm in a writer's room. So
Like
he like
literally right now, that's what you're at?
right now, yeah, and so are you.
Oh
is what
my God, I had no idea.
we're both in a writer's room.
Wow, this is so
Um,
weird. It's nice to be
yeah.
here. Yeah. Like, go ahead, keep going. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, not at all. Uh, so the writer's room that I'm in, because it's still on Zoom, they very lovingly refer to my boyfriend as off-screen Greg because all they see of him is like just his hand and then a bowl or a plate or something like prepared for me. And one of the other writers who's uh a friend of mine now, um she was like, do you know how much money I have to spend for any of that to have for food to come to me?
He's gonna have to start delivering to other people too.
I know. But he's a very good, he is a very good cook. He only recently started doing it, recently meaning in the past like probably 5 years or so. He started cooking, and I think he is more by the books than I am.
Mm-hmm.
He is more by the books. And I think I don't know. I think because I like to make heavier foods, I
Mm-hmm.
think, like foods that you fall asleep after eating.
Yeah, I
So
get that.
like
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm sort of like I'm in night mode when I cook.
Well,
Uh,
also like after a long day of trying to be or being funny, but like being in a room where like you're just in your head the whole time, it's got to be nice at night to like unwind at the
yeah,
stove and have smells and sensations.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know you caught yourself, but you are correct when you say trying to be funny.
No, no, stop.
That
The
is,
self-deprecation needs to end here. This
hey,
is your lunch therapy session.
this is my lunch therapy session.
Yeah.
And you do take Anthem, right?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
so nice. It's nice to just talk to someone in network.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Okay, wait. So now let's hear about the lamb. I feel like this is going to
yeah,
be where we really learn about you as a cook. So talk us
yeah.
through the lamb.
So I have made my own dry rub for this lamb. I always do a French trimmed rack of lamb. That's like my
Wow.
favorite. It's my favorite cut of it. I
You
feel
know,
like
I've never cooked that and I've cooked for 20 years, but I'm so scared to spend the money on it because it's so expensive that I feel like I'm going to
it
ruin
is.
it.
Yeah, that's why we only have it like with the last time we had it was on Christmas. I made it.
But this was just a Monday night that you had this or a Tuesday night. Why did you have it in the middle of the week?
Well, it was it's been a special occasion because my boyfriend's sister is visiting and
Ah.
I have made it I I'm very much constantly like I want to cook anything that has gotten good reviews from friends
Mm-hmm.
to make another adult tell me that I did a good job.
Okay, we're gonna come back to that later. This is
Yeah,
good. This is really interesting.
it's a
Um,
real part of the therapy.
yeah. So okay, so you have a spice rub. What goes in it?
So what goes in it is salt and pepper, garlic powder, ginger powder, freshly ground cumin,
Mm,
coriander, turmeric, and a little bit of cayenne.
wow, that sounds delicious.
it turns out really good.
And do you,
The spices, I mean, the spices do the whole thing, but
yeah,
it turns out great.
because I feel like a very like boring like white bread version of rack of lamb is like with just like rosemary and breadcrumbs and garlic. That's what the Barefoot Contessa would do. But
Yeah.
I feel like I like your version better because it's more exciting and more like robust.
That's what I love. Like that's, I think that because I grew up eating such flavorful foods,
Mm-hmm.
because I grew up, we only ate Indian food growing up, which was incredible. And it was
Where did
always
you grow up?
Kentucky. So then
Oh, wow.
the traditional Kentucky food of biryani and fish curries. But I grew up eating so much like flavorful, and I have a really high spice tolerance, and I love spicy food. It's my favorite. So because of that, I think I tend to lean more towards like your more like Indian, Middle Eastern spices. But yeah, I think there was also, I sometimes like to watch a Gordon Ramsay video because it just, he has this really frenetic energy about him where he
Mhm.
just constantly, it's like it's like his energy comes from like he fills his bladder to the brim, and
Mhm.
then they say action, and he
He's the
just
adult that you want to please.
yes, oh for
You
sure,
like authority figures.
that's my
You
author,
seek them out.
absolutely.
Wow.
um but I saw a video where he like made a rack of lamb, and it looked pretty good, but it was definitely much more, um it's definitely more herb forward,
Yeah. But I'm
spicy.
curious, like with your personality, I mean, I'm only just getting to know you, but already I feel a sense of knowing who you are a little bit. But I'm curious, like, how are you? Like, are you a perfectionist? Like, if the lamb came out badly, or if it had been overcooked, or like you had burned it, like I burned my ribs, how would you deal with that? Would you be okay, or would you be freaked out?
I think honestly I would probably be freaked out.
Yeah.
Freaked out. I would hate that. I would,
Yeah.
there's actually nothing I would hate more. um no,
I get that 100%. It's so upsetting when you like put your best
yeah,
foot forward and you're so excited and then it doesn't work out.
especially when it comes to like, the more, a little bit more like, you kind of just have to have trust in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've never made ribs before, but I imagine that it's a similar sort of like, you don't like when you're cooking something just on the stovetop, there are like, you can sort of, you can fix or at least make better.
Right. You could taste
Um,
as you go.
exactly, a
Yeah.
lot more. But the way that I do the lamb is I like sear it and then it goes in the oven.
Right.
um and it's not like I'm gonna cut through it, before it's ready
But
to
you know
like,
your oven, like you have a sense of what it was going to be. Actually, when I burnt those ribs, you just reminded me. We were visiting friends in Park City, Utah. No, we weren't in Park City, Utah. We were in Idaho. We were in Park City, Idaho. Is that where I was? I was somewhere. I don't even know where I was, but I was in Idaho, and the oven was messed up, and so Sun Valley. That's where I was. Sun Valley, Idaho. I'm like going crazy. But the oven, like I put it in. It was supposed to be 200-degree oven or 250, like low and slow, fall apart ribs. But when they came out, they were so charred. And when we tested the oven later, it was like 200 was like 500, or like it was just some crazy, or like 450 or something that
yeah.
really ruined it. So your point is well taken. I have a question for you though. Have you ever done stand-up comedy?
Yeah, I used to. And I like really, um and you will probably call the following quite self-deprecating, but I think I like lack a significant amount of charisma that you need
I
for
don't agree with that.
like, I really, my style of stand up is that I like stand as close to the mic as possible, and then I just like, uh uh I just like put up some sort of like distance between me and the audience. I'm like not sort of like the way that a lot of my friends are they're, brilliant writers, but then also they are, when they're on stage, it's like they're having a conversation with the audience. I cannot do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that it's been something that I can lean into, which is nice, because then people find that funny and
Yeah.
own, in its own horrible, uncomfortable way.
Well, I brought it up like it sounds like a non sequitur, but I was thinking about stand up and cooking like as sort of similar, where there's like an audience where you're putting yourself out there, where like you're sort of doing things that please yourself, but you're also trying to please the crowd, but you're also pretending like you don't care what they think, but you actually really do care what they think. There's like a lot of similarities in my mind.
Yeah, there's a lot of theater to it.
Yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just I think that that's also, this is therapy. I think that I'm having a breakthrough, which is,
good.
I think the theater of cooking dinner versus cooking, your brunches, your lunches. I think the theater of dinner is also why I like it.
Mm-hmm. Are you a cook at home, like dinner party person, more than you are a going out to restaurants person, or do you like both?
I like both. I really love to cook for people, and I really love to have people over for meals. But I also love to not do dishes.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've made peace with dishes. Yeah, that's my thing. Like I had to make peace with it, or I couldn't cook anymore. And so it's like it's like my Zen meditation thing now. It's like I just put on a musical because I'm very gay and do the dishes.
Oh, that's great. What's your go-to dishwashing musical?
Great question. Don't turn the tables too much because this is your therapy session. But lately it's been Hadestown, which was like the Tony Award winner from this past year. And I really like it a lot. I mean, Cabaret is a classic. Anything with Patti LuPone, like I'm there. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, Patti LuPone, we love her.
Do you love her, or are you just saying that?
No, I genuinely love her.
Oh, good.
An amazing, I mean, she's what a legend.
Well, this is a good like segue back to like growing up in Kentucky in an Indian family, because it's like when you mentioned Patti LuPone, I immediately thought of New York and like a town that had lots of theater and lots of like restaurants. But like, what was it like for you growing up in Kentucky? And did you find like your own niche there? And like, did you feel alienated as an Indian person growing up in Kentucky, or did you feel part of the community?
Well, so my family moved to the US a little bit. So my older sister, she's 4 years older than me. She was born in India. And then when she was a baby, the family moved to the UK where I was born. And then when I was a baby, the family moved to the US. And we came here around the time, so this was like this was mid 90s that we came to the US, and a lot of people were coming from India. So we were very lucky in that we had a full-on like extended family like community in like the Cincinnati area that we grew up with, and the like the kids there were sort of like our cousins basically. So it was obviously we had our like I was one of few people of color at school, and like there were definitely like some instances of racism or ignorance or something like that, but really it was that I had so many sources of comfort because we were so like growing up with that kind of a community. I imagine and it did for my parents like make them feel comfortable. Just because I think when you're confident in at least that aspect of your life where you're like, I know I have my people, then you're like kind of willing to get out there more. You're like willing to experiment with like Kentucky culture or Cincinnati culture or whatever it is, because you have this support system.
Well, I spoke to Soleil Ho, who's the food critic for the San Francisco Chronicle. She was my first guest on season 2 of this season of Lunch Therapy. And we were talking about the cliche and the problematic idea of like bringing the smelly lunch to school and the other kids like
Yeah.
groaning. But she said for her, but she was very conflicted about talking about that because she had written in the past about that, but then she sort of regretted writing about that. But I guess I'm curious, like if that's something that came up for you at all.
So that's another thing that was like really wonderful about while I was growing up was like my friends, I didn't have the like smelly lunch at school thing. A lot of it was because my mom was like, I'm not packing you the cooking that I made last night I'm not packing that up for you to take to school.
Really? Why not?
Yeah, she was like, no, that's dinner food. That's like we're saving here.
By the way, that's interesting because you talked earlier about like your oatmeal as like daytime food, and then like dinner food was like the special foods. Maybe you got that from your mother.
Yes, I think I for sure did.
Uh-huh.
But you know, it was mainly for me like sandwiches and stuff like that was packed. But when I was in high school, I started being like, why don't I just like bring the better tasting food? And when I started to, all my friends were just like jealous. They just, so it was a lot of like instead of, because you know, I did hear the like smelly food story a lot, and I think happy to say that that's sort of more of a vestige of you know, the generation before mine.
Totally. I was just gonna say that. I feel like you're young, and like I feel like that's a newer, like it's even like being gay. Like and this is gonna be like offensive to anyone who hears it, but this is a true story. When I was in high school in 1995, 1996, somebody wore a T-shirt to school that had the Tricks rabbit on it, and it said "Silly faggot, dicks are for chicks," and there was like a play on like silly rabbit, like you got it. But like he was allowed to wear that to school, and that was like in the 90s. And it's like I saw that, I was like, why is he allowed to wear that? So things have changed a lot.
Yeah, you can't wear that shirt.
Yeah,
that had to go through so many adults.
Yeah, and he was just wearing it, and it's like, okay, that's the time period that I went to high school. So I'm glad you went in a better time period for you, because it sounds like you did.
I think about, you know, writers who specifically about somebody like Mindy Kaling, who's, you know, so funny and so talented. And I imagine it was so much harder to just, because she is such a funny person, but also had to take on the entirety of, why aren't your characters more Indian? Why are you this? You know, like answering for all these sociological, like these systemic problems, like an individual having to answer for a system that sucks is, I imagine, incredibly stressful. And now, you know, there are many more Indian people in comedy. And there's a way, you know, because of I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but really because of the shit that she went through and that other, you know, first generation people went through before the sort of computer engineering boom that brought so many Indian people over to the States, especially around Y2K, that it must have just been awful. And I imagine that she didn't have the chance that I have now, where I can just be funny and I can just be insane, and I don't really have to answer that much to like, you know, I'm not specifically hired on shows because, oh, we have an Indian character, you'll write the Indian character. You know, I'll get hired on shows because they're like, we met you and you were batshit and we're worried about you.
Right, that's a great point though. It's like your identity goes beyond just being Indian, which is interesting too, because when I was having you on and like you were going to talk about food, I didn't want to make any presumptions. So it was really interesting to hear like what you were eating, and it's like oatmeal and lamb, and who would know?
And my daily oatmeal and lamb.
Wait, so tell me about the SAG. What was that?
So I basically kind of came up with my own thing for that, which was I did, let's see, how did I make that? Oh, so here's what I do for that now is I use mustard oil. Do you ever use mustard oil to cook?
No, but I live across the street from an Indian grocery in Atwater Village, and I can go over there
Yeah,
right now and get that.
you
Yeah.
gotta go. I mean, listen, I'll like email you a list of stuff that I think you should get if
Okay.
you want to try Indian cooking.
Let's go together and cook
Yeah,
together. That'd be really fun.
that'd be great.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
do it. I mean, like literally, like right now. I mean, let's go.
Okay, yeah. I'm getting up.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
um,
Go ahead.
the rest of this is on the road.
That'd probably be like really good for
Yeah.
going viral or something, but I don't have the equipment or the technology.
But uh so I toast whole cumin in mustard oil, then put in tomatoes, onions, and then I do a mix of turmeric, coriander, garam masala, um what else? I mean, salt and pepper. um what else? Oh, you know what I put in is Thai chili pepper.
Ooh, that sounds spicy.
Really spicy. I think they're also called like bird's eye
Oh
chilies.
yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like tiny, they're really spicy. I love them. I like buy like a box of them and just put them in the freezer, and I'm
Where do you
like,
buy them?
Sprouts has them.
Oh, okay.
But when a lot of the times most grocery stores don't have them, and serrano peppers will work.
Okay. So do you have one of those like spice? They sell it at India Sweets and Spices, but it's like a spice caddy that like when my friends who are Indian, like a lot of their moms have it. It's like gold or brass and has little canisters. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. And I in the house that I grew up in, we have like a cabinet right by the stove that has that in it. Like
Oh,
that's the
nice.
function of this cabinet, and it's amazing. No, I just keep everything in a cabinet, and then like by the end of the week there are like 15 spices just out.
Right.
um,
Exactly. Me too. Yeah.
yeah.
So you
And
you cook these. So go. I want to hear the rest of how did you make it? So you added those
oh
spices, mustard
yeah, so
oil. Yeah.
I add dry red chilies, which I got from India Sweets and Spices. And I put, these Thai chilies in it. And then I add the spinach. I eyeball those spices that I, already put the tomatoes and onions, and I put a little more in with the spinach while it cooks down, and then I blend it.
Really?
Yes. So I blend it, and then if it's like if it's a little too hot, or if I'm like serving it to other people, and I know that their spice tolerance isn't quite as high, I add almond milk to it.
Is your boyfriend's sister someone who likes spicy food?
We were talking about this last night, and she was like saying that she's just like getting more and more into it. So I was like, that's perfect.
That's
That's
great.
perfect for
Yeah.
this. Yeah. And my boyfriend loves spicy food. And so much, I mean, he has to.
Right, because you cook
Just
a lot of it. Yeah.
yeah.
So is sag is just spinach, but like sag paneer has paneer in it. Is that a really dumb question? Yeah, that was dumb.
Yeah. No, but I sometimes do because I haven't found paneer, but I haven't really spent that much time looking, so I can
Okay.
find it. That's a thing that happens, I think, when you don't look for something. Um, but I use tofu a lot
Oh.
of the time, and it turns out great.
And do you use fresh spinach or frozen spinach?
I use fresh.
Because I've been watching some cooking shows where like they were advocating for frozen spinach in terms of value, because spinach, if you buy fresh spinach, it cooks down so much. And if you buy
Yes.
frozen spinach, it's already cooked down. So you're getting more spinach for your buck.
That's actually a really good point.
But it's very wet. So you'd have to like defrost it and then like wring it out first.
Yeah.
We'll think about that on our shopping
Listen,
trip. Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm curious. So like, I'm very jealous. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I come from a family where nobody cooked and it was like a novelty that I cooked. And I want to hear more about like what it was like for you growing up in a family with so much cooking. And then how did you like take that information in? Like, was it, and when did you start cooking for yourself? And did it immediately come out that way?
Yeah, so so my mom is a fantastic cook. She just like is, I mean, everything she makes is just delicious.
Mhm.
And so when I was a kid, it was like we had kid food, but it was like the Indian version of kid food, which was, I thought, I mean, it was so much more like flavorful than than your like pasta and butter and
Like,
you
what
know.
was it? Like, what's an example of what you would have?
Yeah, an example would be like my mom would make this like ginger chicken stew, and it was like she would just make the broth herself, and it was like it just, there was always, everything was like so fresh, so there was like this, it was this very like ginger and black pepper forward kind of thing.
Mm.
So that was a thing that we loved a lot. My mom made this other thing that, I cook a lot because it's quite healthy. um uh it's like some kind of ground meat, either chicken or turkey, like some kind of ground poultry, um with potatoes. It's kind of like an Indian hash.
Okay, that sounds really
That's
good
like,
too.
yeah. And she would like put that in like a sandwich maker. Um,
Wait, a sandwich maker? Oh, like put the meat in the sandwich maker?
well, she would like make it and then put it, make sandwiches
Oh, I
out of
see.
filling.
I
So
see.
it was like, it was delicious. And I really didn't appreciate Indian food as much because, we also didn't have, we always had dinner at the same time. Like my sister and I and my parents, we always had dinner at the same time. So we didn't get kid food for dinner. It was just whatever my parents were eating. And I hated it for a while. I was like, I think because I was so overwhelmed by it,
Hmm.
that I was like, I don't like, there's so many whole spices I have to go, like move around, and I really didn't have an appreciation for it until I got older, and I was like, I discovered how much I love spicy food, and I really had, these days I'm it's like the thing that I cook best is Indian food, and it's the thing that
Right.
I like to eat the most, and it's definitely like those sort of spice blends. Like we have to have so much cumin in the house constantly.
Hmm.
Like
Fresh
we
like
have,
cumin seeds, like the actual.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was going to ask you this. So, how did your mom, like, what was her attitude about her cooking? Like, was she like, this is nothing, like, no big deal, like, you don't have to eat it, like, have a good night? Or was it like, I spent hours at the stove and how dare you not eat my food?
Yeah, it was the latter. And
Okay.
I was also a really scrawny kid. Like I was like I had like a very, my head was really big and my body was really small.
Okay.
Like like I had sort of the silhouette of a lollipop.
Or a Pez
Um,
dispenser, I was thinking.
yeah. Yeah. So eating was like, and I also like had stomach issues, so eating was always like a big challenge in my house to like get me to do and to eat enough. And so my mom was like, she was always very like, no, this is, you can't get up until you've eaten this much, and it was constant negotiations
Really?
with her. Yeah, until like, I figured out what my stomach issues were. And um yeah, and so she and my dad were very, like my dad would sort of like compound the emotional manipulation behind I spend so much time cooking.
Hmm.
You know, other kids' parents don't spend this much time cooking or like putting in this effort. And I would always be like, I'm not asking you to cook. I want nuggets, you know.
That's so funny because it's like my partner and I are probably not going to have children, but like when I fantasize about like what that would be like to have children, it's like, well, they'll eat all my beautiful food and they're going to love it. And it's like the reality is like they'd be like probably hating it and like storming off and running
Yeah,
to
they're like,
McDonald's. Yeah,
yeah, they're like, I want fish sticks.
exactly. Well, you always kind of want the opposite of whatever your parents are giving you. So that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
Wait, so you were talking earlier about your dad's cooking versus your mom's cooking. So like what kind of stuff would your dad make?
My dad makes, he can pretty much make anything, but he is definitely much more like, he still has a recipe book from like forever ago that like is now just like a series of like pieces of paper that are somehow like stuck together, like from India. And so it's like all in Bengali. He uh something he makes that I love is he makes goat
Really?
curry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I love. I think it's delicious. I think it's like one of the most flavorful
It was
meat.
actually interesting because when I went with my friend Shireen, my friend who was Pakistani, back to her family's house, it was because it was Eid al-Adha and they were going to they normally sacrifice a goat as part of the holiday and then cook it. But
Yeah.
that year they couldn't get a goat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't get to see that, but it would have been cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean that's what the that's where you know, that's where you would get goat to cook is like any halal market
Hmm.
will typically have it. Um but yeah, my dad makes that really well, which I love, and he makes it really spicy too.
But he doesn't improvise, he just follows the directions.
He doesn't really improvise. My mom is very improvisational, and she definitely cooked more because she just liked it, I think, better. She like, you know, and I sort of feel the same way now, is like cooking is actually quite meditative.
Totally. Yeah. It's the only thing that calms me down. So
Yeah.
I need a lot of cooking in my life. Um, that's
Yeah.
really cool. I mean, so when you cook, are you cooking recipes that you learned from your parents, or are you cooking things that you're making up on the fly?
Um, I was starting out making just stuff that my mom texted me, you know, a glorified shopping list for. But and it's so funny because like my mom, uh like while I was beginning to, you know, start cooking and you know, get into especially Indian cooking, my mom, because she improvises everything, would just FaceTime me and then tell me when to stop putting something in.
Oh, that's so cute. You should have recorded
Yeah.
it and like made a cooking show. I would have watched that.
And I could have made bank on that.
Yeah, you could still do
Okay.
it. I think that would be
Yeah.
adorable. I think that's like you should literally pitch that to the Food Network. I think that people would want to watch that.
Yeah. You're signed on as a producer now.
Yes, finally. Okay. This is my agenda the whole time.
Yeah.
That's so I love that idea for a show.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's so funny because she will just like know, just eyeballing it, even if it's like super pixelated, like even just in terms of like time spent pouring something into something else. But these days I make up a lot of stuff just on the fly.
and have you cooked for your parents?
I've cooked for my parents, yeah. I've been able to like, that's been really nice, is being able to cook for them. Like whenever they come here, whenever they come visit me, I like to do, you know, I like to really do it up for them. And I went to visit them in November, right before COVID got really bad again. Um, I went to visit them and I was like, it was so exciting because I it was like I was useful in the kitchen with my mom,
Oh,
and I was like also just you know, able to like make stuff that they didn't know how to make.
and do they praise your food? I mean, this goes back to the
Yeah.
authority figure thing we talked about
Oh
earlier,
yeah.
where they were
My
praised. Yeah.
my end game with everything is an adult saying, I'm proud of you, good job.
I think that's me too. Yeah, I think I think like it might be a similarity between coming from like a Jewish family and coming from an Indian family, where you have
Uh,
parents that are difficult to please, perhaps, and it's like
yes.
you just want their approval.
You just want their approval because a thing that I think is like helpful in a lot of ways is that they're not bullshitting,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
it
My mom
means
tells it like it
something.
is. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It like means something. um but yeah, it was really fun to cook for them, and it was just like it felt really nice. I definitely felt it's the time that I have felt the most different from my high school self going back to visit my parents.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we're nearing the end of this podcast, and we begin every session by asking, "What did you have for lunch?" But we end every session by asking, "What are you having for dinner tonight?"
Mm, I don't know. We might go out to eat. I've been thinking about ramen because I really like ramen. So maybe we go to Ramen of York.
Okay, question though. So if you have, when we hang up here, you're going to have the leftover lamb and the sag,
Yeah, maybe.
and
Probably.
will it be like a plate of it, or will it just be like a little nibble?
It'll probably be a little nibble.
And that won't spoil your supper at Ramen of York.
Nah. We're all just kind of it's real loose here.
I remember my friend Lisa. This is back before Mario Batali revealed himself to be a monster. When Babo was like the hottest restaurant in New York, like I was dying to go there, and I flew to New York and I got a reservation, and my friend Lisa was going to go with me, and like she was like, it was like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and our reservation was at 6. And she was like, "Don't get mad at me." She's like, "I'm gonna have a Snickers bar right now." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "I'm really hungry, and like I'm just gonna eat the Snickers bar, but I promise you, like I'll still be hungry for dinner." And that like my brain like exploded. I was like, I couldn't. But she did eat dinner. But for me, like it's like I guess I'm much more regimented about meals. Like
Yeah.
breakfast is breakfast, lunch is lunch, dinner is dinner.
What is I have a question for you. I know that.
Yes, yeah, we can turn the tables now.
Yeah. What is your favorite cuisine to cook? Number one. Number two, what is like the hardest thing that you've ever made? Like what's like the most difficult recipe that you've mastered?
Wow.
And also I am really interested because I do just like love food and I love cooking. And I would love to read your book.
Oh
Do
my
you have
gosh. Yes. Okay. Well, I'll answer all 3 questions. This is a great commercial for my book. Thank you so much. I did not ask you to ask that question, just so people know. The first question was what cuisine. So the cuisine that I cook the most is definitely Italian. I lean on pasta a lot. Like pasta is such a go-to that people who follow me on Instagram just make fun of me. Like, and they're like, "How do you eat so much pasta? Like that's a lot of pasta. Wow, you're obsessed with cavatappi," which is my favorite pasta shape. And I make my husband's favorite dish that I make is cavatappi with sun-dried tomatoes, LOL, which is like a dated ingredient, but it has sun-dried tomatoes, garlic, and cannellini beans and Parmesan. So it's sort of like beans and like oily tomatoes and pasta and Parmesan. It's really delicious.
Yeah.
So Italian, yes, is my number one. What's the most difficult thing? So, and it actually, it's number 2 and number 3 are connected. So the book that I wrote is called Secrets of the Best Chefs. And it was like 10 years ago now, but I was like one of the first food bloggers. So it was still like sort of when I had a lot of momentum for my blog, and my whole thing was being an amateur cook. So I was like, what if I go and cook with like a bunch of famous chefs and they all teach me like their best recipes? So that was the premise of the book. And I traveled the country and I cooked with like Jose Andres in Washington, D.C. And I cooked with Alice Waters in San Francisco. So it was a really amazing experience. But to answer question number 2, there were some dishes in there that were incredibly difficult. And I put them all at the end of the book. And like the most insane one was like trying to sous vide a steak with like a Ziploc bag in like a pot of water with a thermometer. That was crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds so difficult.
But relevant to our conversation, the worst dish I've ever made was when I went to India Sweets and Spices, because like I love cooking Indian food too, and I have Mira Soda's book,
Oh, cool.
which is
Yeah.
great. I forget what it's called, Fresh India, I think it's called. It's an amazing cookbook. So I like making curries. And so I normally will put like ginger, garlic, like a lot of the things you talked about, like coriander, turmeric, garam masala. But I was at Indian Sweets and Spices, and I was like, maybe I'll get some like spices that I don't know anything about. So I got black cardamom,
Yeah.
and black cumin. And when I got home and I was making a curry, I put like a tablespoon of each into the curry, not really realizing that like black cardamom is like
It's sweet.
no, not the
Oh,
one. Oh no, what I got was it black cardamom? It was like insanely like bitter. Like it was like it tasted
oh,
like
okay. Yeah,
ash. Ash ASH, like not ass
yeah,
ASS, but it's just traditionally I think it's used in like meat preparation so that you put a little bit of it in. But
yeah,
I made this whole dinner and then like Craig like bit into it and said, I'm sorry, this is inedible. I can't eat what you just made. And I tasted it and something about like this spice was just the totally wrong spice to put in.
yeah. Wait, what kind of Indian food do you make?
I honestly, like, that's one where like I really do follow other people's recipes.
Mhm.
And so Mira Soda's cookbook is great. I was just going to mention the cookbook Indianish to you. Have you seen that cookbook?
I haven't, but I've heard of it.
Because the author, her name's Priya. I don't know her last name. I don't want to butcher it. But I think she works now for the New York Times. But I think she's from Kentucky too. I mean, when you're telling the story of coming from an Indian family, I feel like I almost should grab it. Will you like entertain the people while I go grab it for a second?
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna
I'm like
sing.
not gonna know what you're saying, so this will be really funny later when I listen back.
Yeah, I'm gonna sing a song to you guys right now, a song that I'm making up, and it's all about how my glasses and my watch are next to each other. Um, okay. So
Okay, I'll listen to that later. I don't know what you said, but here, this is the cookbook that I love. And if you guys are listening to this, you can watch this on YouTube and you'll see what I'm holding up. But Mira Soda's Made in India is, you probably don't need this, but it's all very like fresh.
no, yeah, I would love, you know what? Oh, that looks amazing. What? Oh, coriander is also huge.
I
Or
love
the um
cilantro.
cilantro. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. But this is okay, Priya Krishna, and this is
Yeah.
Indian-ish. But
What's that?
she, like, her story is that she grew up. Oh my God, I'm not gonna find it. Here. This is like gonna be the most boring thing people have ever listened to, is like me looking through a cookbook. Okay, wait. We're almost there. We're almost there. Um, uh, okay, say something like tell a story. Oh, Dallas. She's from Dallas. Thank you. Okay, that was, I can edit out the like stalling.
No, that's I feel like there's a huge Indian population in Dallas.
Yeah. I think actually Anthony Bourdain did an episode, or maybe it was the David Chang show. I'm getting very confused right now, but one of those shows where people go to a place, like they went to Dallas. I think it maybe was David Chang, and they revealed like the multicultural community there and all the amazing food.
Yeah. You know what I really want to be able to cook? I really want to learn how to make South Indian food. I
Oh, like
think
from Kerala, like
yeah, or anything from like because I feel like a lot of South Indian food is like fermented rice, like whatever base for like idlis and dosa, that kind of thing. Um that's going to be my next sort of, that's going to be the next frontier for me.
well, it's funny because when I did my cookbook, not to plug it again, Secrets of the Best Chefs, artisan books available wherever you buy cookbooks. I cooked with a chef named Asha Gomez in Atlanta, and she was from Kerala, and she wrote a cookbook called My Tooth Souths, which is about being from South India, but also like living in the Southern United States. And all of her recipes are like mashups of Indian food and
Wow,
Southern food. So you should get that book. It's really cool.
that sounds amazing. I would love to get that book. I've been to Kerala before,
It
and the
seems
food
beautiful, like from the
is
pictures I've seen.
beautiful. It is so hot, but
Oh,
it's beautiful. I mean, we went um because we don't typically like travel in India because we just go see our family. But this one time we decided to travel and we went to Kerala, and it was just so gorgeous. We like went on a houseboat We were there for a couple nights, just like sort of sailing around, and they would catch like live like fish and then cook it for dinner. And
Oh
it
my
was just
God.
like amazing. And that food is just incredible. And we went in the winter, which was really funny because we were like in a cab, and it was like 95 degrees out. Like it was so hot.
Really?
And my dad asked the cab driver, my dad was like, is it normally like this? Is the weather normally like this? And he was like, no, it gets really hot in the summer. And we were
Wow.
like, that's wow. We were like, we're gonna gift you ice. I don't know.
Wow. Well, Brody, this like went above and beyond. Like, I mean, normally it's an hour. We even like flew past that. It seems like we could just talk forever.
I know. I really love food.
But yeah, but we'll have to
I'm
cook together
so
sometime. Yeah.
yes, please. We don't live too far from each other.
Yeah, I
And
literally like gave out my address on this podcast. So
yeah.
if you're planning on murdering me, like now you know where I live. Well, thank you so much for doing this. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, let's meet up in the real world when things are
Yes, please.
super safe. All right.
Please.
All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, Brody. Bye.
Bye.